Hello everyone, good afternoon. This is Rose Jacobs, live from the 𝐾𝐤𝐴 studio in Sydney, Australia. And you're watching The Early Trades, a show where we share with you a glimpse of the Australian share market opening trade scenario, along with the global and domestic drivers triggering the market momentum. Well, in our first segment of the show today, we'll take a look at how early morning trades panned out, taking cues from the Wall Street action overnight. Then we'll look at prominent newsmakers grabbing the headlines during the early trade hours, as well as movement seen in cryptocurrency, crude oil, gold and metals indices. The Australian share market opened in the red on Monday as a dip in commodity prices weighed on the domestic mining and energy stocks, while investors look forward to the corporate earnings from heavyweight names this week. The bottom performing stocks in the ASX 200 index are Lendlease Group and Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. Global stock markets hit new record highs on Friday, boosted by forecast beating corporate earnings, but the dollar and treasury yields fell after data showed US consumer confidence plummeted in early August. The University of Michigan's survey showed consumer confidence falling to its lowest level since 2011 in the first half of this month. The decline marked one of the 6 largest drops in the past 50 years of the survey. The S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at record highs on Friday. Walt Disney was a star performer, climbing 1.6% after its earnings topped market forecasts. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 16.06 points or 0.05%, while the S&P 500 gained 7.26 points or 0.16%. The Nasdaq Composite added 6.64 points or 0.4%. Coming back to the Australian markets, the local share price index futures fell 0.1%, a 92.9 point premium to the underlying ASX 200 index close. The benchmark closed 0.5% higher at record points on Friday. Moving on, as rapid re-emergence from the economic slowdown observed last year, most countries are now gearing up for high levels of inflation. This has spurred prospects of a sooner than expected interest rate hike across major countries. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand has hinted at interest rates going up as soon as 2022. On similar lines, the US Federal Reserve is exploring the option of tapering security purchases, and so is the Reserve Bank of Australia. However, the following months could change this course for Australia as the country grapples with the re-implementation lockdown due to the current surge in COVID-19 cases. On a positive note, most nations are seeking an improvement in employment as well as industrial production, an increase that has been sustained for quite some time now. However, the overall growth pattern in the economy seems to exhibit an uneven pattern, with some countries still staggering behind. Before we look at the shares that are in news today, it's time for a short break.
Hi there, James Preston for 𝐾𝐤𝐴 TV. Are you into gaming and virtual reality? Does AI and the endless possibilities it entails capture your interest? Or are you constantly trawling through the web to try and discover the latest updates and innovations in the tech space? Well, let us do the work for you. From the latest product launches to shocking affairs on the World Wide Web, exclusive interviews and information about the top companies like Apple and Google to brand new tech startups vying for your attention. 𝐾𝐤𝐴's Tech Beat has the latest in what matters in the world of technology. Join me every single Thursday on the Tech Beat, exclusive to 𝐾𝐤𝐴 TV.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Rose Jacobs and you're watching 𝐾𝐤𝐴 TV live from Sydney, Australia. This is the Early Trades Show. Moving on to the next segment of the show, let's quickly look at the highlights of the prominent ASX stocks under the spotlight during the early trades. The first one on the list today is general insurance broker Steadfast Group. The group has acquired a 100% stake in insurance broker Coverforce for a total consideration of Australian $411.5 million. The funding for the acquisition is planned through an institutional placement and a scrip consideration. Moving on, media company Seven West Media is expecting its digital earnings to double to 120 million Australian financial dollars in the financial year 2022, with a target of 40% broadcast share in the first half of financial year 2022. The net profit of financial year 2021 stood at $318.1 million, a sharp recovery from the loss of $201.2 million over the last year. Next, investment company Argo Investments has declared a final dividend of 14 cents per share, despite the fact that the dividend income of the company's portfolio declined over 2020 to 2021. The final dividend also includes a capital gain of 8 cents per share. Moving on, owner, manager and developer of retail assets GPT Group has reported a profit jump of more than 200% for the first half. Total revenue also rose to 179.6% to $989.1 million, with net tangible per security increasing to $5.86 per share. An interim dividend of 13.3 cents per share has also been announced. Meanwhile, home entertainment retailer JB Hi-Fi has declared its result for financial year 21, reporting a net profit of $506.1 million, a 67.4% jump. The company has also increased its total dividend to $2.87 on the earnings of $4.41 per share. The last one on the list today is Sydney Airport Holdings, which has rejected an improved bid from investors worth $22.8 billion. According to the management, it was undervaluing the company. The management is, however, open to a higher bid. Moving on to the last segment, where we look at the currency, bond, yield, futures and commodities, and metal and mining space. In the currency space, the US dollar fell to a one-week low against a basket of currencies on Friday after a survey showed US consumer sentiment dropped sharply in early August, raising worries of a dent in economic activity. The dollar index, which measures the greenback against a basket of 6 rivals, was 0.5% lower, its lowest since August 6th. For the week, the index was down 0.3%. The Australian dollar was busy, going nowhere, in fact, on Friday, as recent tight ranges showed no sign of ending. The Aussie eased back, having stalled short of resistance at the week's top. And now, before we look at bond yield, futures and commodities, and metal and mining space, it's time for another short break.
Boarding pass, please. Hi, I'm Holly Shields, and I'll be your host for 𝐊𝐼𝐴 TV's news show, Travel Insights. Tune in to get the latest developments in the travel and tourism space, from updates on restrictions to travel guides to info about recreation and outdoor activities, or to glance at the financials of the sector. Though the travel industry has taken a hit from the pandemic, there is still potential left for a revival on the back of economic upturn and COVID-safe travel measures. So if you want to know where the travel and tourism space is heading, dust off your passport, pack your bags, and watch Travel Insights every Thursday exclusively on 𝐊𝐼𝐴 TV. I'll see you there.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Rose Jacobs and you are watching 𝐊𝐼𝐴 TV live from Sydney, Australia. This is the Early Trades Show. Looking at the bond yields, sinking consumer sentiment accelerated a fall in US Treasury yields on Friday amid low trading volume as the market looked to the Federal Reserve and upcoming data for signs that could push rates higher. The benchmark 10-year yield, which traded low as 1.293%, was last down 6.7 basis points at 1.3001%. That was about 17 basis points above a 6-month low of 1.127% reached in August. Looking at the futures and commodities space, gold rose more than 1% on Friday after a survey showing that US consumer sentiment dived in early August. calming investor concerns over an early tapering in the Federal Reserve's asset purchases. Spot gold rose 1.4%, whereas the US gold futures settled 1.5% up. Moving on, the crude oil prices dipped on Friday and ended the week little changed after weathering concerns from banks and the International Energy Agency that the spread of coronavirus variants is slowing oil demand. Global oil benchmark Brent crude settled down 72 cents or 1% for the session. US West Intermediate crude settled down 65 cents. In the metals update, benchmark iron ore futures in China closed lower on Friday and logged a second straight weekly decline on sluggish demand for the steel-making ingredient due to the government's steel output controls. The most traded iron ore futures on the Daily and Commodity Exchange slumped as much as 4.2% on Friday before closing down 0.9%. Base metals such as copper prices rose on Friday as the dollar weakened after a sharp drop in US consumer sentiment fed views that the Federal Reserve could hold off on tapering stimulus in the world's largest economy. Benchmark copper on the London Metal Exchange rose 1.3% higher and was on track to end the week higher after shedding 2.7% last week. Well, that's all for now on the early morning trades. Stay tuned to 𝐾ALKINE TV as we have many more shows lined up for you, sharing live updates across the economy, markets and sectors. I'm Rose Jacobs and I hope you have a profitable day.